guys, this is EK from EK Designs. I'm coming in today to share this fall project I made using the Happy Fall digital stamp from Crafting Desert Divas. This is part of a bigger blog hop from the Fall Coffee Lovers blog hop that's going on from September 15th to September 22nd. This is the digital stamp Crafting Desert Divas has designed for this blog hop. And I'm coloring it in to make a nice little fall card. I'm using what right now is hands down my favorite pumpkin coloring combination, and it's like 4 markers, which I never use. But I love the idea of the yellow being within the ground of the pumpkin, or the base of the pumpkin, because it keeps a lot of movement and roundness within the pumpkin. And I found that if I kind of use both the R05 and this YR27, I can get some really good shadows between the two, between all the different layers of the pumpkin. I'm kind of in love with this Digi, by the way. If anybody's curious, I'm absolutely in love with this digital stamp. It's, first of all, pumpkin, and I just imagine he's drinking a pumpkin spice latte, and it's a sweet little owl, and there's lots of space to color. I am notorious for my digital stamps for blowing them up as large as I can on a piece of paper, so that way the image is the focal. I mean, let's be honest, I'm a colorist. I don't like coloring in teeny tiny small images. They're hard to color. But when I get my hands on a Digi like this, I like to blow it up as big as possible. And you can see he's taking up the majority of the A2 card frame. And that's how I like it, because it makes me happy. So yes, just going through, adding some simple colors to the pumpkin. This is a new brown combination. I know a lot of people with their Copic markers fall into patterns and habits and continuously use the same color combinations that they like. I am a byproduct of adult ADHD, and needless to say, doing anything too many times makes me bored out of my mind. So I'm the crazy person who's constantly experimenting with my Copics and trying to come up with really great new color combinations. 90% of the time I fail miserably and end up just making mud or something ugly. But I'm liking this brown combination. It's the E43, E55, E77 or 77. I don't even know off the top of my head. But I like, because it's this really dull brown but has great shadows. And I've found, like, I've had, with the exception of just using like the E40 family, you can't come up with a great dull brown that has some great depth to it. And yet, I think this one works. Let me know what you think on this, because, I don't know, I'm kind of loving the dullness in it. And when I wanted to go slightly lighter in the face, I just pulled out that E41 and knocked out the E77 and used that same kind of combination to give these lighter tones to the face and the feathers. I don't know, I think it's fun. I got a nice little boo-boo right there in the eye. It won't be the last boo-boo, trust me in this, but just a little color splendor, and I was able to push back that brown that was in the eye. I added just a bit of the brown to the stem, and I added some of that blue to his eyes to help pop the pupils. I pushed back a little bit of the blue with the colorless blender, just because I don't want his eyes to be blue. I want them to stay white, but I wanted there to be some prettiness to it, for lack of a better word. Now, I just mentioned how in browns I'm constantly experimenting with my color markers. This one's not an experiment. This is my tried and true dull green combination. This is my YG03, YG63, YG67. It is my favorite dull green combination. I can't find one that works better. I probably at some point will try to reinvent the wheel again and see if I can come up with a better green combination, but for the time being, this is it, and I would expect to see it as much as humanly possible this fall, because I like it. I don't know, it's got nice depth, it's got good shadows, it's not super bright. I don't like my greens to be super bright unless I'm going for that bright bold, and let's be honest, it's fall, so you want it to be kind of a more muted color palette. I kept the owl's coloring really simple, because I knew I was going to do a fancy background. And what you just saw was the inspiration photo I'd pulled up, I guess, I don't know, I think I just Googled, like, pretty fall backgrounds and found something I kind of liked, and I could see where the color depth was, and just kind of left my laptop sitting off to the side so I could look at these inspiration colors. I wasn't really going to copy the photo per se. I just wanted kind of a depth of color. And as you can see, I've grabbed my pencil and I'm just drawing in some trees and some background scenery. If you notice, I'm not using a whole lot of detail. I'm just kind of getting a basic idea out. I will warn you, because it used to drive me crazy, now it doesn't, and I have a solution if it does drive you crazy. I will warn you that once you lay Copic marker down on top of a pencil line, you cannot erase the pencil line. If you're using a really light color combination and you want that pencil line gone, draw it out and then erase it so it's just barely there. And you can see these lines are barely there to begin with. Now I grabbed my E70 family combination, and I knew the trees in the background were going to be lighter than the trees in the foreground. There's one tree in the foreground. So just the trees in the background just basically got 2 light shades of this E70 family brown. And the one tree in the foreground got 3 different color combinations to make it seem like it was closer in perspective. And here I am right now. This is the tree that's coming up in the foreground. And you can tell I'm using a little bit heavier hand with the ink. Now, I will warn you, the most depressing thing in Copic coloring is about to happen. My E77 is about to make a blob. Here we go. No! I'm replaying this moment because right here's that moment you have to decide. Are you just going to quit the project and throw it away? Or do you make it work? I thought the coloring on my owl was too good just to start over. And really, the truth is, I did not want to get up and print out another digital stamp. I was being lazy, and I hate redoing things. If I had in fact thrown the digital away, I wouldn't have re-videotaped it. I don't tend to make 2 projects. Now, you'll notice the blob is less. I grabbed that colorless blender and tried to push some of the blob away. I figured between my colorless blender and some really creative coloring, I could make the blob a little less obvious. I will warn you, because you know the blob of color is there, it will always be noticeable. At least to me is. I look at this card and I'm like, oh, the coloring wasn't bad. The blob of ink. It's all I can see. And I think I actually got it pushed back pretty well in the end. Right now it's still pretty ugly. When I was putting leaves on this 4 tree, you'll notice the tree that's closer in perspective to us has much bigger, bright, bold leaves. And the ones in the back have much smaller dots. It was one of the tricks I was using to help create the depth of the card and try to hide the blob. Because let's be honest, at this point, everything I do is about masking that massive ink spot. But I think you can tell because the color on this tree in the foreground is bolder and brighter, and the leaves seem bigger. It kind of has that perspective of being closer. It took this last marker, the YR21, and really just kind of colored it in so all those little leaves could blend in together. And I very riskily re-grabbed that E77 and added some more depth within the branches because I lost a lot of that detail with all the leaves. I'm putting down some color for the ground, and again, the ground that's underneath the owl and his pumpkin is brighter and darker than the ground that's on the hills behind him. It's that trick of perspective. The further something gets away, the lighter it gets in color. So you'll notice the coloring I lay down onto the card is much lighter in the background than it is in the foreground. If you're struggling with making that hill in the background look further away, try doing a much lighter color, and you'll find that that depth and perspective works better. I wanted leaves on the ground. I think they kind of just ended up looking like pointillism. I think it just looked like spots. I don't think I actually achieved this leaf look I was going for. But we're going to pretend it works. Again, at the end of the day, I could look at the whole card and think it was great. But all I could see was that blob in the trees. And it was depressing. I dropped just the hint of shadow underneath the pumpkin. I didn't want to pull out my grays. I didn't want to Grays are a great way to drop in a shadow, but I tried to use a darker orange to convey my shadows. And you'll notice I didn't do a whole lot in the background in terms of color. I just added that hint of light yellow to give the perspective of atmosphere under the trees. And once again, you see me working the blob, seeing if I can mask it. I did the best that I could with that branch. I pulled out my Jelly Roll pen and added some highlights to the pumpkin and the beak and those little owl spots on his forehead. And I think the cup got some. They're not big lines. I don't tend to add lots of white gel pen marks, but sometimes you need a little white back in. And this is my favorite gel pen to do that. You can tell it's just some really faint dots. And there you go. That's my my finished card. I will be linking it up to the Coffee Lovers blog hop. And if you want this digital stamp, it's available at Crafting Desert Divas. Thanks for watching. Click the subscribe button, click the like button. You know how to do these things. And I will see you next time with my next card. Bye.